part of the point of this event was not just to hear from folks like yourself, whether in Web3 or out of Web3, who are making a difference in the world, but to actually expose the non-Web3 world to the power of Web3. You know, one of the most exciting parts for me of the last few years has been going to the ETH events and joining Shelling Point and meeting so many impact-focused Web3 people, but it was always impact-focused Web3 people. Where were the non-Web3 people coalescing and then learning about Web3? And so part of the purpose of this event is to expose those in the broader impact and humanitarian world to the power of Web3. And so that's a good transition into our panel as we invite a few others onto the stage in terms of the power of Web3 for good. And so with that, unless you had any additional thoughts, Kevin, I wanted to invite a few others to the stage, starting with Vriti Saraf, the founder of Ed3DAO and K20 Educators. Ed3DAO, Vriti can speak more to, but as I try to bring other people into the spotlight, Ed3DAO teaches educators about the power of Web3, and K20 Educators is bringing education into the metaverse. I've got also Ethan Buchman, another Toronto local, who's one of the founders of Cosmos, one of the, I guess, large infrastructure Web3 platforms out there. Gregory Landua, Griff Green, who is one of the founders of, or the founder of Giveth, who, again, I'd love to feature in tomorrow's segment on new economic models, because they've, from what I understand, really leveraged some of the exciting aspects of Web3 and cryptocurrencies to amplify good and giving towards impact causes. We've got Niran, Babalola, who is going to be speaking in that panel tomorrow. Would love to hear from everyone, including those on the panel that aren't on the stage yet, on maybe just some quick thoughts from everyone. We'll go around the circle. Quick thoughts on the power of Web3 for good. Where do you see the greatest levers of these new technologies allowing us to? Why don't we start with Vriti?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Kevin, awesome talk. Always refreshing to hear from you. So I come from the world of education, and I don't know how many of you had really amazing educational experiences, but most people on the planet haven't. Most people, especially our age, have been sitting in chairs and been asked to sort of consume knowledge instead of create it. And it's been more about, information downloads and uploads rather than peer-to-peer sharing and autonomous learning. And I think the thing that Web3 gives me tremendous hope for is, the concept of bringing decentralized ecosystems and infrastructure into the way that we operate, bringing regenerative systems into the way that we learn, bringing self-sovereign identity. So actually recognizing the identity of a child as a self-sovereign citizen and not just a vessel to be filled. All of these concepts, I think, and paired with things like the metaverse, which is immersive learning, and paired with, the idea of peer-to-peer learning. I think that, to me, is the future of education, which is it's decentralized, it's self-organized, it's immersive, it's self-sovereign, it's about creating knowledge together rather than sort of, having knowledge that is then disseminated to, people that, are these empty vessels. So that's sort of where my world is with Ed3DAO, which is we're trying to get this message and these systems and these principles to educators so they can start implementing it in the classroom and then teach students to live in those ways, to live regenerative lifestyles before they're even asked to work or create projects in those sort of ways. So I guess I'll pass it to Ethan so it's easier to moderate here.
Cool, thanks for that. Yeah, I guess education is a great place. The thing is about, blockchains kind of provide a new way of thinking about the world and the relationship between communities and technology. So I like to use the analogy of what I call the community computer. in analog to the way personal computers transformed the relationships between individual persons, gave them sort of sovereign, and technology gave them sovereignty over their technology, over what they choose to run and how they run it, moving us away from kind of mainframes owned by, you know, running in Dell's basement or whatever. And yet, despite having sovereignty over your own computing device, you can still be interoperable with all the other personal computers in the rest of the world, you know, using this thing called the internet. And so, you know, I see blockchains as community computers, as effectively computing devices for communities that allow them to, you know, to compute together, to build sort of infrastructure and applications together that they are sovereign over, and yet can still be interoperable with sort of all the other community computers out there. And that's really been the vision of Cosmos, and that can have impact in basically, you know, every area of life, the same way personal computers have kind of impacted every area of life, from, you know, education to health to, you know, communication and everything else. So yeah, community computing.
I'll take it. Hi, I'm Lauren Luce, and I work with Giveth. I was just speaking on a panel a little bit earlier. Happy to be here. I mean, I think that the Web3 for Good opportunity, I mean, I love that Gloria was mentioned, Gloria, right? I love that how she was mentioning education. And I think that like Web3 has an opportunity to really transform the way we fund systems and create systems with like solid feedback loops. From decentralized feedback mechanisms and decentralized voting. It's like we can create feedback mechanisms that kind of feed into our public goods that that basically just make the public goods we have in a broad sector better. And it's education and medical care and the environment and just a really broad spectrum of public goods. And I think that's a real opportunity for Web3. There's a lot of people here, so I will just pass it on to Kevin.
Oh, I just spoke for 15 minutes, so I will symbolically pass my time along to Gloria to see what she thinks.
Hi, I'm Gloria. I am part of the Build Box team underneath Supermodular that Kevin runs. And for me, when I think of Web3 and blockchain, I always think of empowerment. Like it allows us to really now put like our money where our mouth is and like really get to do what we want to do or see action that we want to see. The side that I'm most passionate about when it comes to Regen is, of course, anything that deals with making the world a better place for human beings' days of lives, like everyday lives side. I think it's why I'm so passionate about the hackers in the community, building the things that they want to build and being able to see those projects live live. And yeah, so that is something that I personally enjoy. For me, my whole family comes from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so I'm always seeing like people live vastly different from how I grew up here in Orange County, and just being able to be aware of people's differences and different needs and seeing how much little changes can affect people's lives generationally in a big way is huge. And I feel like with blockchain now we have the ability to like remove some of these bottlenecks that have been coordination failures for these impacts and give people directly and have better impact. So I'm a huge fan of making lives better through technology. With that, I'll pass it over to Gregory.
Thanks, Gloria. Hi, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. I really resonate with Ethan's perspective around the social computing, and specifically, I'm very passionate about building tools so that communities can come to consensus about ecological health. And the role of ecological health is the most foundational public good of all, right? Without ecological health, the rest of the economy, the rest of society, you know, we as humans are embedded in this beautiful planet as part of a much greater than human world. And building tools to come to consensus about the value of that ecological health is a really fantastic application of a state machine or a blockchain, where we can create consensus about the ecological state and how it relates to ecological health and various derivative values that we can start to bring into our economy. The easiest one to think about for a lot of people is carbon credits, but I think it really goes much beyond that. Like, how do we weave, as Lauren was talking about, how do we create these feedback loops where our human economy is honoring and improving ecological function and health through how we're valuing and how we express symbolic value. And the last thing I'll say is, it's really an exciting moment in history. And one of the things that kind of attracted me to blockchain and Web3 is the social construction of value and the way that we as communities can start to engage consciously to construct and regenerate the symbols of value that bring our communities together and create value flows and economic relationships and agreements, and we can build those to be regenerative. So with that, I'll pass it over to Kelsey.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. Elliot, thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to be amongst such change makers. For those of you who don't know me, I lead the Web3 strategy for Upbring Innovation Labs, and we are an innovation lab located in Austin, Texas, that's dedicated to breaking the cycle of child abuse. I also serve as the GM of ChangeDAO, which is an NFT marketplace on the Ethereum blockchain that's dedicated to supporting changemaker needs. And so I've obviously resonated with everything that's been said so far about what levers can we pull to create the social impact in the world that we want to see. And I think it goes back to the infrastructure. I got into the Web3 space through the nonprofit world, and it was very much a transactional thing. It was very much like, hey, this is a new way to fundraise. But as we started to scratch the surface a little bit, we realized that the inequalities of blockchain actually apply to child welfare and the persistent issues that we face in ways that Web 2 and Web 1 and traditional data management systems cannot. And so my goal really is to both bring nonprofits to Web3, not just sending cryptocurrency to nonprofits, but actually how do you use the underlying technology to push your entire sectors forward, which is what we're doing at Upbring. And then for ChangeDAO, creating the place for change makers and the tools for them to use to make the change they want, not prescriptively the change that we think should happen in the world, but rather giving them the tools to create the change that they know needs to happen in a way that they know how to do it. And so I see my role in those two levers being, how do we bring nonprofits to Web3 and make sure that they're understanding and utilizing the technology so that they have the seat at the table as we rewrite this social contract. This is kind of what we're doing right now. And then also, how do we provide the tools for change makers who want to come to the table, but maybe need some guidance and some help and some resources to do that. So I kind of see my role as twofold, and so happy to be amongst, like-minded individuals who see the value that blockchain technology can bring unique to, Web3, not Web 1 and Web 2, and how we can really rewire, repipe, however you want to say it, the boring stuff so that we allocate goods, resources, and power more equitably and more responsibly. Thanks so much. Who's left? Niran?
Oh, you got to unmute.
Can't hear you.
Here, I think he said to pass it to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Griff, go ahead. Sorry about that.
And actually, I'm really glad because I wanted to follow you because it's like I couldn't be more aligned. A lot of the things you said, Kelsey, are really what Giveth is all about in the Common Stack. We're trying to do the same thing. It's how do we bring nonprofits into the Web3 space? Web3 for good has there's so much opportunity to rethink and program values into our money. This is a tweet that Kevin made a couple days ago, I think. Programmable money, we can program the values into the money. And but how do we actually build the infrastructure, which you also referenced, Kelsey, to make that easy so that we can have repeatable patterns that nonprofits can use to actually start making these systems work for themselves. The nonprofit pattern, like 501c3 is a repeatable pattern that has worked really well for a lot of nonprofits. It's a financial system, right? They can get, Americans can get tax deductions when they donate to you if you jump through these hoops. How do we build systems that are repeatable like 501c3, but in Web3 that are accessible and easy for people to use? Kevin has done an amazing job with quadratic funding, and that's a repeatable pattern that lots of nonprofit groups and open source communities are using over and over again. And actually Panvala as well, it has some really cool repeatable patterns with stamps that, if it takes off, people can easily rinse and repeat. And I think that's what we need to keep working towards, is how can we build these repeatable patterns that it's like an LLC or a business model, whether it's subscriptions or whatever these models are that work. How can we start bringing in these economic models, especially, that are repeatable and anyone can use to start up as a small nonprofit and scale into something bigger? Because actually a lot of people on this call have, basically all the guys on this call I know of have effectively started their own economic systems, right? But we were all connected enough that could work. But as a small nonprofit who wants to create an economic game to generate funding sources for the value that they're creating, they can't do that. They don't have that same network. So how can we help them start those networks small and scale them up? That's what excites me in the Web3 for Good space. And Niran, I don't know, can you talk? No?
Man, how about now?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, we did it. Hooray. All right. Thanks, Kelsey, and thanks again, Griff. My name's Niran. I work on Panvala. There's a lot going on in Web3, but to me, there's only two things that I think every single person on Earth needs to understand to see why it's a force for good. One of the reasons it's important is kind of all in our heads, actually. Web3 is so important because it cracks people's heads open. They see a blank slate and their imagination runs wild. And that's actually what a lot of people use as a criticism of Web3. That is actually a killer feature, because really what we need to solve so many of the problems in our world is to get people to organize. If you tell somebody, join my organization, they are bored, they will ignore you. If you tell people, join my DAO, they will say, tell me more. That sounds cool. I want to be involved. That is a good thing. It is not a cynical viewpoint at all. It is literally a killer feature of what's going on in Web3. The second thing that's important is that you can bootstrap new things in a way that you couldn't before. And a lot of the talk about new kinds of currencies is based on that. But I think the better way to think of it is not like as a currency that you spend to buy goods and services. It's better to think about it as a dumb rock. You can create new dumb rocks. And my favorite example of a dumb rock is lithium. Imagine you are somebody who thinks there's going to be a boom in batteries for electric cars, and you want to invest in that future. There's a couple ways to do it. You can say, hey, I'm going to invest in a battery company that's going to make a whole bunch of new batteries and make a lot of money. You might also want to invest in a lithium mine, because somebody's going to need to dig the lithium out of the ground and provide it to the battery companies. But you also might just buy some lithium. Like, people are going to need this lithium. They don't really need it right now. I'm going to buy some lithium. It's a dumb rock. It doesn't do anything. I just hold on to it and it gives me no money. But people are going to want this lithium eventually. And maybe that's a way that I can be a part of this battery boom. What this technology gives us is a way to create new lithiums for any social movement you might want to create. If you think it's the future, if you think something is going to grow, if you think that there's like social energy here, not just entrepreneurial battery creation energy, but if you think there's social energy here, you can create a lithium for your movement that if people believe that it's going to work out, that's actually something that they might want to hold on to be part of it. So if you have those two things together, organizations that people want to be part of and a way to bootstrap new organizations, that is literally the whole story about how you change the world. You don't have to believe in any fancy new economics. You don't have to believe in any particular solution. You just have to believe that human beings can build something better, and that you should find people that you resonate with and literally join their DAO. That's literally the whole story that everybody needs to know. They should be part of something that's calling itself a DAO, because that's how we're going to reshape this world. Right on. So everyone's shared some perspective on the possibilities
that Web3 enables. And I was happy that Kelsey had shared some of what she's doing with Upbring, because it's a great example of, we hear so much about Web3 in the Regen space with amazing orgs like Regen Networks, but less so I find we don't necessarily hear about groups in community helping vulnerable populations. So I was very happy shared a bit about that, but I'd love to hear from folks about your examples of the most inspiring examples you've seen of change coming as a result of Web3.
I have to say, like, this is going to piggyback on what Niran was saying about like imagination and joining DAOs. Like, when I look at the difference between Web 2, where like, you have to fill out an application if you believe in a company, and then like go through an interview process and see if they have a role that fits kind of what you like to do. Like, that is such an old school way of working, where with DAOs, they have causes that you believe in, and you can jump in and contribute to, the DAOs like right away. And it's all like this new frontier. So your perspective and your ideas can help further the progress along. And I feel like when it comes to like working for DAOs versus working for old Web 2 companies, like DAOs just can move so much faster, and they have so many brilliant ideas. Like, it just changes how people work, and allows people who have bright ideas to like have their ideas, come to life per se. And I love seeing in DAOs, hold on one second, love. I love seeing in DAOs is like people who are passionate about, translating documents or translating or putting things up on YouTube, like really finding their purpose and like being able to do that within a DAO. And I think that is a huge opportunity as the world becomes much more global, where people can live all over the world or work from wherever they want to work from, and still find purpose in life in these causes, and working for one DAO or multiple DAOs in order to kind of fulfill their lifestyle. And so what I like to see is like all these people from around the world that have amazing talent, who might not have access to the traditional global job market, but actually are working for DAOs, working for these passions, and like contributing in like such amazing ways. That is something that really encourages me as we continue to move forward in Web3.
I'll build on that and go back to what Niran was saying. I think the innovation that's been possible because of Web3 is very similar to the innovation that was possible when the internet first came out. And right now, the idea of being able to follow your passion and create a product that's going to impact the world, and you're going to be able to generate an income from it, is more possible than ever before. And I think that idea that Gloria just introduced for us, which is, people can do the things that make them really happy and contribute to the community and live lifestyles that are sustainable, I think is, more possible than ever before, even though none of the principles we're talking about, like regenerative systems or decentralization or self-organization or none of those things are new. They have been around for years, if not dozens and hundreds of years, right? But it's the first time that we have the infrastructure to support those things and iterate rapidly and prototype rapidly. And that rapid prototyping allows us to move much faster on a principle that has existed for 100 years, but hasn't seen much movement. I think that's really one of the magical pieces of it.
Yeah, I really think that the society that we're part of right now, it's really set up to allow you to profit the most when you can exclude people the best. And it's kind of counter to even our human nature, where it's like we need each other to thrive. We need to live in community, and we need to work together to thrive. And this is something that like Web3 and the DAO ecosystem is kind of creating the opportunity for, that like people can plug in and work in these like collaborative and like even collaborative competitive ways that still ultimately are all like kind of feeding back into the same systems to build on top of them and create something better. And then when you add in the layer of being able to like add programmable money that you can kind of give out or issue to people when they add value to the DAO or they add value to the community, then it becomes this like redefining the way that society works, the way that monetary systems work, in a way that like we're actually kind of going back to like our inherent human nature to collaborate and work together.
If anyone wanted to add on to that thread or center any examples that are inspiring for them of Web3 making a difference in the world today, in addition to the exciting possibilities that we all see, I'd love to hear from you on that.
I would love to kind of highlight a couple of things that we're doing that are on the ground programming that look a little bit different. I think we talk about the workforce and the economy and inclusion of people in organizations, which is super important at a systemic level. But an example of real world impact, you know, right now we're at Upbring, we're building a data management system for child welfare. So when a child comes into our system, generally, their data rarely follows them. And they see, you know, 10 different stakeholder groups, from their teachers to their, you know, caseworkers to the foster care agency, their bio family, all of these different actors. And right now, centralized systems aren't really serving them because it has a single point of failure. If the administrator isn't there to upload the PDF or whatever, it doesn't go through the system. That data doesn't follow that child. And then that child usually suffers worse outcomes because of that. And so that's a data management problem. That blockchain with its decentralized inequalities really, really applies. And so we're looking at how do you harness these inequalities, asynchronous coordination, decentralization, no single point of failure, peer-to-peer, permissionless type of transactions. How do you use that and then apply it to these persistent issues? And so we actually just finished our first demo for that and are building a couple more. And we see, like, right now, it's just the first step. Does blockchain apply to the child welfare sector? But really, we're talking about large health systems, electronic health record systems that affect everyone. That could be, you know, you could take this and you could apply it to a variety of different supply chain scenarios, basically. I think blockchain is going to completely change supply chains, which contribute to massive inequality across the world. So the one real world application of how you apply this to different populations, different demographics, and then also on a global scale. Now, with that said, also on the real world application on the ChangeDAO side of it, you know, we look at movement building and how movement building is siloed, how and exclusive, and the tools to keep up with it, or the tools that exist don't really keep up or support movements as they should happen successfully. Blockchain changes that. DAOs change that. The gate to entry is lower. And you can participate right away, and you can connect instantly and transact instantly with people who are across the globe. And so that changes the scope, the reach, and the speed of how movements can be built. And we've seen this, right? Like, we saw Ukraine DAO, we saw Constitution DAO overnight raise a bunch of money, have that flash in the pan. ChangeDAO aims to take those shooting stars and put them into constellations. And so how does we go from having it be a flash in the pan nonprofit fundraising type thing to taking these campaigns, turning them into DAOs and keeping them going and strengthening over time? So you have people who are continuously engaged with their passion and these issues, and not these just one-off campaigns, that episodic campaigns. For example, we're in the middle of giving season that you probably saw like a million emails come in yesterday. You know, how can we change that piping so that the nonprofit sector doing social good is not codependent on these boom and bust cycles? So I think there's those are two examples of how this underlying technology is actually changing the way we work every day and communicate with each other on a daily basis.
I'm going to add a couple layers there. We're talking, I mean, I think there's some...
I just wanted to pause this. I'm not used to Mac.
Oh, looks like Roberto came unmuted in the audience there.
Yeah, I'll try to find it and find who it is in
Any
mute.
idea?
But, go on, Gregory.
So
They've gone to
one really interesting application in our context at Regen Network has to do with using blockchain technology to create community land registry systems as an alternative to corrupt centralized registries, right? Where you have and specifically there's a pilot in Ecuador where we've been working, where there's been some significant land trafficking associated with the mining, this sort of intersection of mining rights, potential carbon credits, really poor land records. And the land records that do exist, of course, if you have enough money, you can go to the office and have the notary just sort of, put whoever's name on it that you want. That kind of, in places where rule of law is maybe a little bit more distant, there's a real opportunity for blockchain technology, and this is happening, to come in and actually create fully community sovereign versions that are really held by the community and enable some of the things that many of us take for granted in the global north to become accessible, but not in a colonizing way. And so I think that's something that I see, and there's still, let's be honest, there's still miles to go there. There's a lot of work. We've been in pilot, but there's a lot of work to get that right and to make sure it isn't, I'll say sort of my last piece will be, there are a lot of perils as well in Web3. And one of the perils is the complexity. We're dealing with pretty complex distributed systems engineering. And there aren't that many people who at this moment in the history of humanity are really capable of understanding the whole system or even sort of significant chunks of it. And that means that there's a lot of responsibility on the makers, on those of us who are in the industry trying to push things, to sort of approach it in a particular way in order to get these really positive, transformative outcomes that we're, seeing the potential for. So.
To piggyback on what Kelsey was saying, I really like the lens of movement building. In particular, the idea that more people taking more action can have more of an impact. And in the Web3 space, this is going to be kind of like an overused example, but the best example of that is Gitcoin. There's nothing that does that better in Web3 than Gitcoin. The idea that more people makes more of an impact, and that they're also giving up something to contribute to what they want to see happen. Literally more of that happening is what Web3 shaping the world looks like. There's no way to, to me, it's not just about having some sort of mechanism that makes economics work better. It's really having, if there is a mechanism, having a mechanism that has that movement building story baked into it. And quadratic funding happens to have that built into it. More people taking more action is really what a movement is all about. And Gitcoin has that built in. And more themes that look like that is what Web3 making an impact on the world looks like.
So I guess echoing what a few people have said and reflected on, the opportunity to use this kind of technology to redefine value, or how we account for value collectively. I see this whole industry as kind of an acceleration of open source generally, and the sort of reduction in barriers that open source makes possible. It's it is very much a sort of trust building institution across any human with access to the internet can kind of participate in the open source movement, and crypto and sort of Web3 brings that to money, which until now has kind of been the most exclusionary kind of institution, and it's also deeply ill and broken. We saw that with the 2008 crisis, and of course Bitcoin was very much a direct response to the 2008 crisis to try to do something about how we open source money. Of course, it's a pretty naive approach to the future of money, but it is a start that has kind of unlocked whole new ways of thinking about it, basically cracking open people's heads to be like, where does money come from, and how do we create it, and who's responsible for it, and how does it value things. And so I've kind of always been a big proponent of money being really the killer app And I think we're in the very early days of figuring out what that means and what that looks like. But I see a lot of opportunity for this technology to be used to support more local currencies, more local flows and local supply chains that can really help the sort of small and medium-sized businesses and enterprises and nonprofits and so on that are engaged in their local communities, but are suffering from essentially a lack of liquidity and access to financial services and the structure of finance. And one of the things we're working on, we call it collaborative finance, which is basically using this technology to take advantage of patterns that exist in trade credit networks and in the real world payments graph that no one is really looking for or paying attention to, but which can allow sort of businesses and individual entities to benefit from the fact that there are these sort of collaborative cycles of credit, essentially, and that businesses, it turns out, are in more cycles than they're aware of. Usually you're only aware of sort of bilateral relations, who you owe, who owes you, but it turns out those bilateral relations are embedded in a much wider network that contains cycles and patterns. And by tuning to those patterns, you can do a lot of interesting things and save businesses a lot of stress and reduce systemic risk and all these kinds of things that are only possible by looking at things more sort of collectively and collaboratively. And so those are the kinds of projects I'm particularly interested in, because I think money is deeply ill and is accelerating the sort of demise of the planet and human well-being and so on. And so, really targeting an intervention into the monetary system is what we, at least what I think we need to do. One of the things we need to do.
Yeah, maybe to piggyback off of what you said, Ethan, and a little bit of what Gregory said is we have this opportunity to create these new monies, right? And people are innovating all over the place, and it's fantastic actually. But we still are young at it. It's a nascent field of study, and I'm really excited about some of the stuff coming out of the Token Engineering Academy, Token Engineering Commons, and really taking this into a science. Because if you think about the monies that we're building, they're really open and permissionless, and anyone can use them. They become public infrastructure. But when we build public infrastructure, we usually have civil engineers signing off on this. Like, anyone can build a bridge, but is that bridge safe to drive on for the next 40 years for large trucks? That may take some actual engineering work. And I feel like in this space, we're innovating so fast, and we just move fast and break things, but then, hey, anyone can cross our bridges. So when we're making this, I'm really excited for hopefully in this next cycle, for token engineering to become more of an importance, especially for the stuff in Web3 for good, because we are building public infrastructure with that has positive intent. And so we need to take a little bit more serious approach about doing it right, with simulating and finding best patterns and actually taking it seriously, so that we don't have Luna collapses, or when Faye raised $1 billion and their stablecoin went out of whack right away. These catastrophic failures are really bad for the industry. And luckily, we haven't seen too many catastrophic failures in the Regen side of things. And that's probably because we take it a lot more seriously than the other guys. But I hope
there are a couple catastrophic failures. Let's be honest.
Yeah. You can take it, Gregory.
I'm just being curmudgeonly. I think there have been, this is just to build off of and uplift, I think, the point that Griff is making. Like rigor, integrity, and ultimately, in this concept of token engineering, simulation, this is all super important. And obviously we're going to make mistakes and learn from them. But I do think there have been some really good examples in our space of mistakes that have been made. And I don't really want to get into the name and shame side of things, and that's the other piece of all of this, which I think is really an interesting conversational piece, is how do we generate a culture amongst the sort of like Regen or Web3 for good community in which mistake making isn't something to hide, in a way, if that makes sense. There's actually sort of like, we can learn an awful lot when we're just honest about the places that we messed up. And so there's another thing there, which is just like, how do we celebrate and learn and then inculcate those learnings into the movement?
Yeah, yeah, and
Uh,
let me just pitch this token. If you're interested in token engineering and you feel like it's important, there's an academy. I'm not really affiliated with them or anything. Token Engineering Academy, tokenengineering.net. Free lessons, free courses, and the tooling's not all there, but the principles make a lot of sense. And so there's a free class out there where you can actually become a certified token engineer. I'll give it up to him.
One of the things that is cool to me about the regen space is that I think in many regards, it can be a rather safe place to experiment, because one of the patterns in my head for what looks super cool and interesting to me is when you're coordinating and organizing value that actually does not live on chain. If you're coordinating value that lives on chain and there's a hack in the smart contract, it's blown up. But if you're coordinating value that lives off chain, your smart contracts still, you don't want them to mess up, but if they do, the value still exists. It was off chain the whole time. And again, that's really core to that movement building piece. As people are bringing their own value to the network and then using that, acting collectively to actually shift value in our economy, the value actually lives on chain. It never lived on chain to begin with. So again, going back to Gitcoin, which is actually the best example of movement building in Web3, people bring their value. Like they're bringing the value that they're donating. Even the people funding the grant rounds are bringing it together for that round. If there's happens to be a hack in a smart contract that's holding a grant round, God forbid, that would be terrible. But then, okay, you keep going. The value was off chain the whole time. Like it's not it's the in my head, the story of what helps us build a better world for many people is core to tying that value to what they're bringing to the table in the first place. So in that category of tools, it's just much safer to build. And that helps me sleep at night.
We've got just a few minutes left. So rich, everyone, and I would love to do this again. And I hope you can all join us in person next year, so we can have a much longer, much richer dialogue. But just want to invite everyone to share some final thoughts on today. So just maybe a quick, 10, 15 seconds from each of the panelists on final thoughts. And one thing, we'll give an extra minute or two, but just if there is any way folks here could help you in what you're doing, please center that, because the point of the event is not just to celebrate your work, but to amplify it. So if there is something that folks here could do to help move your mission forward, please let us know.
Engage. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody's doing all these awesome projects. Dive in. I'm sure, sort of going around and, engage. And yeah.
Totally. I agree. I mean, if you care about child welfare and blockchain and you want to help out Upbring Innovation Labs, my DMs are open. Please follow me. Please reach out. We're going to be doing a big campaign with ChangeDAO actually for this giving season. So if you follow me, you'll get all the updates on that, and that's going to come out. But outside of these like one-off episodic type of engagements, it's an honor to have been able to connect with all of these amazing change makers today. And it really fills my cup and makes me feel less alone as I'm like pushing this, boulder up the hill like Sisyphus. It's nice to know that there's a whole community who feels like they're doing the same thing, and who are working towards that goal. And please stop in and ChangeDAO. We are looking for change makers, and we want to help you build the movement and make the change in the world that you want to using NFTs on the Ethereum blockchain. So if that's interesting, please reach out. We want to support change makers like you who are making in real life impact in their own communities.
While we move on to the next speaker, please throw any info into the chat so folks can keep in touch or follow your work. Why don't we move to Niran?
This has been great. It's always great to come together with people who have a positive vision of the impact that Web3 can make, because again, that's not what you see on the internet every day. Thanks, Sam Bankman-Fried. But with Panvala, again, we want to help every community dramatically increase their budgets. If you're part of a community that wants to learn how you can use the power you already have in our economy to shift marketing dollars into your community's budget. We want your community to join our movement. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you run a business or know somebody who runs a business that basically is an e-commerce business shipping stuff to people's door, we want to help you get more customers by literally funding the communities in our network. And we want to help you make that happen. You don't have to give your money to Mark Zuckerberg, to Google, whatever. You can literally fund communities, get the same business value, and reshape our economy at the same time. So we want to work with you to make that happen.
Beautiful. Please come tomorrow for our new economic models session where Niran will be explaining Panvala in a little more depth. Gloria.
Yeah, I would probably say one or two things. I just remembering on the ethos that blockchain is built on, I think sometimes we within the Web3 communities can be our own echo chambers. So just remembering that those who are on the ground leading the change also have great insights, and to listen to those change makers as well, and that it's a partnership between us who have the technology and those who are the change makers too, whether they are Web3 or not. Let's just empower each other to make those changes. And for those of you who participate in hackathons or want to know about building projects in the Web3 space, I'll have a talk on Sunday where I'll be talking about hackathons as a public good. And I would love to have you all join us then during that time. If not, you can always follow Biddlebox on Twitter, and I'll put the link down in the chat for y'all.
Ethan. Thank you, Gloria.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me here. This was great. I'm part of a company called Informal Systems. We're structured as a workers cooperative. The two things we're really focused on are improving the language we use to talk about building organizations. So we have a guide for how we do that at workflow.informal.systems. We're eager for people to check that out and see if it works for them. We think it could help provide a lot of structure and improved accountability frameworks for DAOs. And then the other thing we're working on now, like I mentioned, is this collaborative finance, kofi.informal.systems. We really want to use this to help communities of small businesses basically save liquidity, payment stress, cash flow problems, and so on. So if you're interested in any of that, check out those sites and get in touch with us. Thanks.
Yeah, I got to hear Jeff Emmett from Block Science and Token Engineering Commons, I believe, or Giveth actually, introduced me to Ethan. I got to hear his kind of perspective on workflow. It sounded quite fascinating, something that could probably enhance everyone's efforts. So I encourage you to follow up with him. Gregory, and your nugget.
That's you. So yeah, Regen.network is the website, Regen Network. Right now, what we've got for folks is some really cool on-chain carbon credits if people want to offset. And that's just the beginning. Also working with a lot of communities to create their own crediting standards. That's really the aim here, is to be able to bring people together to express a new unit of account, which reflects ecological health. So it's very exciting. And that's coming in the new year. And yeah, just super grateful for the time to get to jam with everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Vriti.
Hey, thanks. This was awesome. It was great connecting with everyone. We are squarely in the education space. I love the work that everybody is doing here. My experience is in education, and we believe that if teachers are able to make change from ground up and change the education system, then we think that that will be a 100x multiplier for the rest of the world. And so if you're interested in that, if you're interested in, school systems and, potentially unraveling those school systems into creating more DAO micro schools, or, an interesting ed tech service that might be rooted in blockchain, we're starting an incubator next year that will help educators basically identify core problems in education and solve them using Web3. And then we also have a micro-credentialing program where we are trying to certify educators in very sort of foundational principles of, DeFi, metaverse, regeneration, tokenomics, things like that. And so if you're interested in that, I'll drop my information into the chat, but thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Griff.
I just have too many orgs, honestly. It's like, and I'm surprised Ethan only highlighted one, because I know you're in the same boat. But Common Stack, we're building, we want to help you build your own impact DAO, and we have a really cool framework that allows you to scale. So definitely reach out to us, and I'll put all the links down there. If you have a nonprofit and you're just looking to tiptoe into Web3, Giveth.io is the way, and I'll let Lauren show it better. Also, if you're just looking for some support doing dev work, design work, generalmagic.io is a huge option. If you're looking to bootstrap a reputation system, we have this really cool praise bot that is really interesting for actually creating a culture of gratitude while rewarding qualitative contributions, which are usually very hard to reward. And I don't know, there's probably a few more, but I'll just throw it over to Lauren to better shill Giveth.
Oh, thanks, Griff. Yeah, I think quite a theme in this conversation was like, how can we use Web3 to create in real life impact? And that's one of the things that we're doing at Giveth. We're a crypto donation platform where anybody can add their project and start raising funds. And then we're using like programmable money and issuance and Web3 tooling to kind of build layers on top of that. So we have a system where donors who give to public goods projects actually get Give tokens back for their donation. And we're about to launch a new product actually in 11 days. In 11 days, we're launching a new product where you'll be able to use those Give tokens to actually like vote, signal your support for the projects that you believe in, and then they get extra benefits on the platform. So it's kind of like we're combining DAO governance and Web3 tooling and just like putting that all together to support nonprofits and really empower them in the Web3 space so they can do better at creating real life impact. Yeah, who's left to pass it to? Did everybody go? I guess
everyone did go, but I think everyone did go, but I was going to take Kevin's spot and just show giving on Gitcoin grants rounds and giving to your favorite projects there. So like if you've not participated in a grants round, I would strongly encourage you to participate in a grants round and look at all the different projects that you can contribute there. And again, I think the average contribution is usually like less than $1. It's not about the amount, it's about the people being able to give with their voice and give to the projects to get the matching pool. So I would encourage you all to check it out.
Thank you all so much. Really lovely to have you all here together, each real powerhouses in the Web3 space, and we'll hope that you can join us in person next year. And the idea is to have, I was really inspired by ETH Denver, which had multiple stages. I know Gloria was instrumental in putting that together and had multiple stages and multiple tracks going on at once. And the idea is that we could have a weekend-long conversation just with everyone here, let alone had we really the bandwidth to have everyone here and those in your communities educate the non-Web3 change makers about the power of Web3. And so I do hope you'll be able to join us. And so much of the insights and wisdom that you have about organization and economics has already been, for those that are part of our Wisdom Council, has really already been instrumental in the development of global unity, and definitely invite everyone to join us. I just sent out an email about our next gathering on the 14th. I would love to have you there.